Hello again. This week I was waiting for the arrival of a punch ladle, and I was going to do a whole piece on punch ladles because I think they're very interesting things. But actually, it's just arrived, and I've got to clean it. And I'm just reminded about how many people have, since I started doing these little films, have said, how do you clean antique silver? Well, there's no hard and fast rule to it. But I thought I'd show you how you carefully, or hopefully how you carefully clean a piece of antique silver when I show you this. This is a punch ladle. It's George II. It dates to 1741. So it's been about for nearly 300 years. So we have to treat it with a bit of respect. In terms of the tarnish on this, I don't know if you can see, because actually as it's reflected, you can see a lot of the blackness here. This is really how we like to find things. This isn't a hard tarnish. It hasn't bitten into the surface. This has just been left in probably a cool environment, and the surface has begun to oxidise. And you get this blackness. You can still see bright silver around the edge, and actually the shaft isn't that bad. But it's just as well to get this off, but to gently do it. Now, the first thing I have to say is what I use. I have a cloth, as you can see, a well-used and in places dirty old cloth. I have some silver polish that I've had this bottle now for, I think, 6 years. I don't know if you can get the brand anymore, probably not. On larger things, but not on this, a toothbrush. But this is important, a used toothbrush. So when your toothbrush is too soft to do its job around your teeth, that's the time to clean it and put it in the silver polishing drawer. You don't want to use a new toothbrush. The bristles will be too hard and you could potentially scratch the surface. And then a lit and extinguished matchstick. And we'll get to that in a moment. Now, I'll show you how I start to polish this. I won't film the whole thing, and then we'll look at a part two and it cleaned. The first thing I should say about this is this has a wood element as well. It has a turned handle. They're normally fruit wood or lignum vitae or ebony, although ebony is quite difficult to turn and quite brittle. This is probably... it's quite dark. This is probably hawthorn, I think. A lot of these are indigenous British woods that were dark enough to form the handle without ebonising them or staining them. And I think that's probably hawthorn. And you can get short enough lengths of that to turn. I've waxed that. That's the first thing I've done is wax it. Clean it and wax it. Let the wax harden. Buff it off, and then should any little spots of polish get onto it, I can quickly move them off and they'll hit the wax surface rather than biting into the wood, as long as I'm quick enough, which hopefully I am. The second thing I should say about polishing bits of silver, don't be in a hurry to do it. As I say, this has probably not been cleaned for, I would have thought 40, 50 years, maybe longer. So if it took me half an hour, probably won't, but if it took me half an hour just to clean that, that's fine. No problem. Slower the better. And also, a lot of people will look at that and think, I'll clean the bowl. I'll clean the bowl. Now, the best firm of silversmiths in the land, they used to get their polishers, their workers, just to clean things. I mean, this is a bit draconian, but just to do 1 square inch of a piece at a time, to apply the polish, let it dry, buff it off, rinse that off, and then they'd move on to the next section. But by doing it that slowly and meticulously and gently, you're cleaning the object properly. But I'll show you how we start. So if you've got one of these proprietary brands of silver polish, which you all will have, don't use the wadding, that's too abrasive. If you're using silver dip, that's horrific stuff, don't use that. And if you're using the foaming stuff, that's fine for something solid like a fork. But if it's got any holes to it or any, like a bit of wood, a little bit of ivory fillet or anything, don't put it anywhere near that stuff because then it involves water. which is bad news. Now, the reason that this cloth is dirty at the corners, form a little corner, a little wad, and just put a tiny bit of polish on the cloth, not on the object. We're not going to swamp it. That's fine. So I'll pick a little spot here. I'll start from the side of the handle and I'll move round. Just get the polish and just put it on. You're not pressing at this point. You're not pressing a bit of silver. You're applying that polish to it. Now, you just let that dry. That's the thing. I'll just do a little bit of it now. You can, as it dries, go back and reapply it again, because by drying, it becomes slightly more abrasive and it does its job. You don't want to put lots on immediately and start rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and rubbing. Just leave it a minute and then go back. Now, that hasn't got it all off. I'll tell you that now. Right, we'll stop there for a moment. Now we'll get a clean bit of cloth. Ideally, if you're more organised than I am, you will have a clean buffing cloth and an applying cloth. But I've been doing this long enough to not give a stuff about that. And then I'll just give it a little clean over, like that. And you can go back and do that surface a number of times. But if I show you now, there is the dark side, unpolished. There is the polished side. Just that little bit. And that's taken, what, less than a minute to do that. So you can see how working around this in sections, carefully and gently is the word, this will be brought up. Now, it's going to be very boring if I film myself polishing this entire ladle. I'll stop it here, and part 2, we'll look at it as we're nearly finished, and I'll show you what the matchstick is for. So wait till part 2 and I'll get on with this.